Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading. Thanks for tuning into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. I have with me my co-host, Chris Agelastos, here to talk with us today about this secret war that's taking place. Chris, we are going to talk about BRICS today. We've really, it's been a couple episodes since we've talked about them, and they
Yeah.
still continue to kind of roll along, doing their
They
little
haven't gone
thing.
away, have they?
And I don't think they're going to. Um,
Yeah.
this is out of Watch for Guru. De-dollarization is the topic of discussion, or this kind of the title part of the title here, and a list of countries reducing dependency on the U.S. dollar. Now, as you read, it's a kind of a short read for those of you tuned in. It's probably worth the read, but the bottom line is it gives us a list of these countries involved in de-dollarization, but one thing the caveat or what I would say, it's not just limited to these countries. This is just looking at Russia, China, Iran, India, and Brazil.
Yeah.
So what I found interesting too is, part of the original BRICS is South Africa, and they didn't mention anything about them.
Yeah. Good
So
point.
I don't know what's going on there, but here's what's interesting. I mean, Russia, no surprise there. I mean, they have been kind of anti-dollar for a bit, and even as many times as Putin says he's not, he can't really say that because you know he always says it publicly, and then he says he didn't say it, which is kind of funny in its own little way. Um, but they've been doing ruble and yuan trades for a while.
Mhm.
They've been leaning more towards gold. When you look at China, they've been very assertive in their efforts to uh, utilize different forms of currency and exchange other than the U.S. dollar, and they are really, in fact, they say here, the flagship bearer of this de-dollarization initiative. And it's interesting they say that too, because I mean, I think it's because, again, they've been more assertive, Chris,
Mhm.
than in the global marketplace than perhaps Russia has. But I think I'd put Russia right up there with them. What is interesting, we have Iran on here, and
Mhm.
what, the reason I found that they're being made mention of here interesting because we're at war with them currently, and they've barely used the US dollar since 2010, 16 years now. And
Yeah.
with that being said, it just shows that there is a life and a world that exists without the US dollar. And I'm not so sure, there are other countries that are kind of, taking a look at that and saying, you know what, why do we need that same dependency? They've been able to do it and they've been doing okay. So maybe that's something that we can do as well. Uh,
Y-
and then the other one, got the other two here, India. With India, it is interesting because we've heard this and we've covered this on podcasts. They have explicitly stated that de-dollarization is not part of their financial agenda. However, they are pushing for, heavily pushing, they say, for internationalization of the rupee.
Mhm.
But moreover, they may be saying it's not part of their agenda, and that could be fair, but it's just a natural byproduct of what's taking place right now. So they don't have to
Yeah.
admit they're doing it for it to still be happening, which is what is really taking place right now. And then finally, Brazil, they have done several bilateral transactions with China, and everything is status quo there. And then let's keep in mind, as this is happening, again, these are just the highlighted nations, not to mention all of the peripheral nations that are doing trades with these countries, and they're being allowed to kind of participate in the whole BRICS alliance without even being a member yet. That in all cases, one of the main things that there are reasons they're doing this is because it benefits their domestic or their local currency and the economy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's how they can get around saying that they're not trying to get rid of the dollar. De-dollarization is not a thing. That's not our focus. But what they are focused on is promoting and using their own and other local currencies, which, if they're going to be using other currencies and not using the dollar, that is de-dollarization. So they can
Right.
they can say that's not their goal, But by promoting and using other currencies, that's what's happening. And of course, their argument to that is that they're simply trying to reduce risk and dependence on one currency, and that currency being the U.S. dollar. Obviously, with Russia and Iran, it makes sense because of sanctions, but also U.S. debt levels and just the overall financial system and the vulnerabilities that exist there, not only in the U.S. but also throughout Europe and other parts of the world. So, it from their standpoint, I believe it makes complete sense to promote their own currencies, try to build up and strengthen their economies, and if the byproduct of that is pain for the U.S. dollar, I don't think they're going to be too concerned about that, right? They're not going to cry for the U.S. They already feel that the U.S. dollar has had a lot of advantages over the years. So anything they can do to push their own agenda, I believe they're gonna continue to do. And China and the other BRICS nations are obviously going to be at the forefront of that.
For sure. Well, and when you look at, Iran being part of this, and this we've discussed this before as well, it's interesting because of us being at war with them,
Hmm.
the there was a question as to whether or not how strong is this alliance? Are they going to continue to allow Iran to be part of it? Even though they may be opposed to the United States being at war with them, and seemingly they're okay with it. And my point being is they are willing to overlook some because they say that some of these nations are completely objectionable to wars, and they don't want that part of their modus operandi, if you will. But yet it's taking place, and they, again, like I say, they've been willing to say, okay, let's put that aside, not worry about that, and just focus on what we're doing here. And it speaks volumes to, I think, the strength and the I guess the focus that this BRICS alliance has really been able to maintain. All right, so
Yeah.
second to that, talking about the war, the economic damage caused by, this is out of the economic collapse blog, the economic damage caused by this war will stretch to the end of the decade, and shortages will go way beyond oil, gas, and fertilizer. And, that's something that, I think is becoming more and more evident each day, or there's more information coming out about this each day. Where what I found interesting, in fact, Chris, is they really get into the area of like plastics. And,
Hmm.
when you start looking at plastics in what context or what capacity, they're utilized in our pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
They're utilized in um, the what was it, the various medicines,
Hmm.
capsules. I mean, you go right through the whole list: antibiotics, blood pressure medication, and this is all tied to oil. So on top of what has already been a kind of a hot button in medical costs and healthcare costs in this country, now that you throw this into the mix, this is only going to throw a little more gas on that fire, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, what they're really talking about here is just persistent, continued supply disruptions and inflation. And it kind of reminds me, if we go back not too many years now, what, 4 or 5 years to the COVID era, prices are really quick to shoot up when there's a problem. We've already seen that with our gas stations, right, at the pump. But it takes quite a while for prices to come down. And so, persistent inflation is going to be a problem for a lot of families. And that's going to cause them to spend less money in other areas, right? They're going to have to get to work. They're going to have to, save money for gas to some extent, at least here in the U.S. But what was interesting is really how this also can affect the food supply. I hadn't even thought about. I mean, I know a lot of fertilizer comes out of that region, but I hadn't even thought about the fertilizer shortage. You think, okay, well, when was the last time I ran to the store to buy fertilizer, right? That doesn't affect me in my daily life. However, that can cause lower crop yields,
Right.
which can cause what? Higher food prices because of supply and demand and other shortages globally. So it really is a kind of a snowball effect. And once you start affecting the supply chain, you can affect all kinds of different sectors and things that I wouldn't even think would affect me all of a sudden are going to be a problem. And I think most people aren't going to notice until it really impacts them directly. And at that point, it's really too late to do anything about it. You're only noticing it because the increase has already happened.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, and that's the thing. I do unfortunately believe we're going to see more news and information come out about this, and the effect this is going to have. Hopefully not, but it's kind of one of those things that at some point that cost is going to have to be absorbed somewhere somehow, and unfortunately, it's us consumers that are usually the ones bearing the brunt of that. Kind of like tariffs. Tariffs were
That's
initially
it.
were passed along to the corporations, but they quickly figured out a way to pass that along to the consumers. So,
Yep, absolutely.
nonetheless. Well, thank you for that, Chris. And for those of
Yep.
you tuned in, thanks for doing so. If you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do so. If you'd like any more information about the Secret War and or gold, you'll see our phone number as well as our website in our show description. Feel free to contact us. We encourage you to do so, just to learn more about this and how it may be affecting you and perhaps some of the things you can do to try and avoid it. So thanks so much, Chris. Talk to you real soon.
Yep.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Take care.